Mad Movie Mark with another Mad Movie Mark movie review, counting down my top 10 least favorite movies of all time or my top 10 most disappointing movies of all time. I never really decided on a title for this, so I'm just going to propose both of them each time, and you can just pick which one you like the best. So we have done 6 movies so far. My number 10 was Across the Universe. Number 9 was Team America World Police. Number 8 was MASH. Number 7, Golden Compass. Number 6 was Dreamcatcher. Number 5, Beowulf. And now we are here at number 4, which is going to be the 2019 X-Men movie Dark Phoenix. So this is the 4th installment of the sort of new class X-Men series. This will also be the last in this series, as when this was released, Disney was in the process of buying Fox. So now all the X-Men movies that are coming out later will be part of the MCU, which I'm pretty excited about, though I will admit I am a bit tired of the MCU. We could talk about that later. I just think that the movies aren't stellar anymore, but hopefully that'll change when we get to the X-Men movies. We just found out yesterday that there's a rumor. I don't know how credible the rumor is, but a lot of people are talking about it, that Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad / Better Call Saul, who plays Gus Fring, is going to be the new Professor X. That, I think, would be great news, depending on who they get to play Magneto. For me, the X-Men franchise has always really relied on a great relationship between Magneto and Professor X. If you don't have that, then you really don't have a whole lot. So, like I said, we are doing Dark Phoenix. It stars James McAvoy as Professor X, Michael Fassbender as Magneto, Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique / Raven, Nicholas Hoult as Beast, Sophie Turner as Jean Grey, Ty Sheridan as Cyclops, Alexandra Shipp as Storm, Peter Evans as Quicksilver, Cody Smith McPhee as Nightcrawler, and Jessica Chastain as Vuk. So when I was young, I would say from maybe like 4 or 5 years old to, let's say, 11 or 12, my life can basically be divided in 2 halves. My first half of my life I spent playing, idolizing, taking in as much Ninja Turtles as I possibly could. And the second half of my life, in that time span, was all about X-Men. I was very into the cartoon that was on at the time. I was very into trading cards. I didn't really read the comics at all, but I kept up the best I could with the television show, with the trading cards, stuff like that. But I loved X-Men. And when the first movie that came out starring Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, Halle Berry as Storm, I knew I had to go see it. I saw it on opening day. There were newspapers there interviewing people because it was such a big deal. This was kind of the start of the big push of superhero movies. They obviously weren't part of Marvel at the time, but I think this maybe I'm wrong, but I think this kind of paved the way to the Spider-Mans, to the Iron Mans. I think that if these X-Men movies had not been that popular, maybe we wouldn't have gotten that big push of superhero movies that we did, but we did. Thankfully, all the X-Men's except for Last Stand so far have been good. Well, Last Stand and Dark Phoenix, to me at least, I've enjoyed them all. I found something enjoyable about all of them. Even X-Men Apocalypse, what a lot of people didn't like. Now I will have to go rewatch it because it has been a while since I've seen it. But if I'm remembering correctly, I did enjoy it. But I'll go back just to make sure. So the first of this new class series was X-Men First Class, and then they did X-Men Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, and then Dark Phoenix, which is where we are right now. This movie centers around Jean Grey, who is the Dark Phoenix. In this movie, she is the most powerful X-Men, powerful mutant that there is, which, from what I remember in canon, was true. The Dark Phoenix was the most powerful X-Men, at least what I can remember. So it is true to that. So when we start the movie off, Professor Xavier and Beast are in a room. There's a space shuttle that's being launched into orbit. They're watching a television screen, and they can see that the space shuttle is in a bit of distress. It's kind of spinning around in space, and the astronauts are in a huge jam here, a huge pickle, if you will. So the president calls Charles Xavier and says, "Hey, can you guys get up there and save these astronauts?" So they say yes, of course. They have a new rapport with the American people. They have a new rapport with the military. They are friends. They are seen as heroes. And Charles Xavier wishes to do the best he can to keep this camaraderie. The last thing he wants to do is to be seen as outsiders. He no longer wants to be seen as the villain. He is basically willing to bend over backwards to do whatever he can to keep this relationship together, even if it really means sacrificing his team, if it means putting them in harm's way. He believes that this is the greater good, and that it's best to stay on the people's good side. So they go up into space. They take Quicksilver and Nightcrawler, originally go into the spacecraft and save a bunch of the astronauts. When they get back to the ship, they realize that there is one astronaut that was not there because he was in like the repair bay trying to repair something or whatever. So their ship is falling apart. It's crumbling because of this solar flare. So a solar flare basically is what's causing this spaceship to go haywire. So the only person who can keep the ship together long enough in order to get that last astronaut is Jean Grey. So Nightcrawler this time takes Jean Grey in there. Nightcrawler is able to rescue the astronaut, but unfortunately Jean Grey is not able to get out in time, and she absorbs the solar flare into her body. At this point, everyone thinks she has not made it. She's floating in space. Nightcrawler goes out and grabs her, brings her back to the mansion. She seems okay. Great. So Charles Xavier asks Beast, "Hey, can you take a look at her? Her powers are off the charts." But he just says, "Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead." And then he tells Charles Xavier that he's a little concerned that her powers are kind of off the charts. So they're at a party. The next scene, they're kind of at an outdoor party, and her powers start manifesting, and she becomes this all-powerful being, and she ends up kind of yelling no, and it's like, I guess like Eleven from Stranger Things, where she just yells no, and then like people fly and like bad things happen. Similar. This came out before Stranger Things, but you know, it's similar. So she ends up having like basically passing out. Charles Xavier is trying to look into her mind to kind of see what's going on, see what happened when she had that solar flare. As he's in her mind, he notices that she's able to see things that she hadn't seen before. So I guess Charles Xavier put up all these walls from her past. She was in a car accident that she caused, but she didn't mean to because she was a child, which ended up killing her mother. She thought her father was also dead because Charles Xavier said, you know, your father didn't live. But her father is actually alive. Charles Xavier just lied to her and put up this wall using his mental telepathy so that she wouldn't be able to know, so she would never find out. She couldn't go back into her mind and figure this out. But as the Dark Phoenix, she is able to figure it out. She gets really upset, and she confronts Charles Xavier, who said he was just doing what he thought was best for her. She ends up going to see her father. Her father is very surprised that she's there. He blames her entirely for his wife's death. He says he's basically been robbed of the rest of his life that he could have lived with his wife because of his daughter. We see a scene where he asks Charles Xavier to take his daughter because he is not able to care for her anymore. He's not able to control her powers. He is worried that she will just be a loose cannon, and he will not be able to save the world or anyone if she decides to get angry and kill people. Charles Xavier says yes, takes her in. So now she feels like she's been cast aside by her father, and she's been used and abused by Charles Xavier. So she just starts causing all this mass chaos where she's tearing apart houses and stuff. And Mystique approaches her, and Mystique tries to calm her down. and say, hey, look, I'm not going to ever turn my back on you. You can trust me. I know a lot of the people you feel like in your life have done that to you, but I will not do that to you. And then she inadvertently kills Mystique by accident. Um, After she kills Mystique, she goes to Magneto. Or this is sorry, we'll start talking about Jean Grey. She goes to Magneto and she says, "Hey, look, Magneto. I know that you've found peace where you are right now. He was kind of like in a village with other mutants, but he was in peace. He wasn't surrounded by all the hassles of daily mutant life." She says, "But I need your help. Something bad has happened." He sees blood on her, and he's like, "Well, whose blood is that?" And then the military come in because she caused all this havoc earlier. She killed a couple cops. So the military comes in and they want to take her into jail, or at least, bring her in. And she gets upset and she destroys a bunch of helicopters. And Magneto says, "You have to leave because I'm protecting the people that I'm with. You seem like you're a bit unhinged. So, it'd be better if you leave." She leaves, and then Beast comes and visits Magneto, and Magneto says, "Wow, like I haven't gotten this much, company in a long time. What's going on?" Beast says, "We need to find Jean Grey." Magneto says he has no will. He doesn't want to find Jean Grey, but then Beast says that Jean Grey killed Mystique. So of course now he wants to go find Jean Grey. So it all culminates into this final fight scene where you have Professor X, you have Professor X, Storm, Nightcrawler, you have Beast, you have the other villains who are with Magneto. They're all teaming up because now there's this girl from another race from a long time ago named Vuk, who wants her powers, who wants the new powers that Jean Grey possesses. So she's trying to get to Jean Grey so she can take her powers away. So you have basically the side of Charles Xavier and Magneto versus this Vuk girl. She ends up taking some of the power, but Jean Grey realizes in the end that this is her true family and she needs to protect her family. So she basically ends up, I guess she ends up dying, but not really, because she's still the Phoenix. And at the end, we have Magneto and Professor X play a nice game of chess. So that was a very long-winded rundown of what the movie's about. So this is just my opinion, by the way. A lot of people aren't going to have the same opinion as me because I see these movies differently than other people see them. What works for me might not work for other people. But in my opinion, the first half of this movie really shows how deeply they need Michael Fassbender to make these movies great. Because Michael Fassbender is only, he comes in the movie at like the 53rd, 54th minute of the movie, and it's barely like, it's not even 2-hour movie. So he comes in at about the halfway point. I know that there's already been 3 movies that feature like Michael Fassbender and feature James McAvoy and their relationship. So there's not a whole lot more you can do with Michael Fassbender's character. But man, when he's on screen, for me, he outacts anyone else. I really feel that he is tortured. I really feel that he is struggling within himself, the struggle, the push, the pull between like these regular people are bad for mutants, and like maybe Professor X is right. And he does this for me, and he does this in every performance of these X-Men movies, where he's just, every time he's on screen, he steals the screen. He's completely, he's in a league of his own. James McAvoy is good too. And of course, Jessica Chastain is good, but we'll get to her in a minute. But Michael Fassbender just steals the show to me. And I found myself in the first hour of this movie, especially when I saw it in theaters, I just wanted to know, when are we going to see Magneto? I don't think that Sophie Turner, maybe she's just not given enough here, but I don't really feel her pain, and I don't feel her suffering when she's on screen and she's moping. So she's basically spends most of the time moping, sad, or angry, and I don't really believe any of it, to be perfectly honest. I just don't feel that she has the acting chops, or like maybe I said she's just not given enough in this movie to where her acting ability really shows. Now I've seen Game of Thrones. I think she's a great actress, but just not in this role. I don't think that this is a role that was made for her. And when I think of Jean Grey, I have a hard time believing that she is what the comics and what the television cartoon intended for Jean Grey to be. She's very, I mean, even when she's angry and she's like destroying stuff, she she's supposed to be, at one point she's supposed to be conflicted and then she's supposed to be angry. I don't see enough of a change between what she's doing when she's on screen. So whether she's sad or angry or mad, whatever, I don't see enough of a change in what she's doing to really believe her character. I think that Jennifer Lawrence is really good, but you could tell. So she didn't really want to do another X-Men movie, but she decided to do it because the fans wanted her to do it. I think that's part of the reason why she was killed off in this one. And I'm not sure that she was fully committed to this movie. She's in a lot of it for the first half, but then obviously she dies. But her relationship is kind of the same with Professor X, that it's been off and on. And then you have like the background characters, really. You have Cyclops, you have Storm, Quicksilver, Nightcrawler. They don't use Quicksilver that much in this movie. In fact, the only time he really has any camera time is when he's going from ship to save the astronauts. There is a couple scenes where Alexandra's ship, who's plays Storm, is allowed to shine, and I think she does a really good job when she's reading her lines. It's very believable that she could be Storm, and I think she just she's very limited in her role, but I think she does a very good job in what she's trying to do here. And you know, Cyclops, I don't know, he's okay for what they're going for. Cyclops is obviously one of like the Omega mutants. He's one of the strongest mutants ever, and I just don't think he really has his time to shine here. I think a lot of the problem is that there's a lot of story that doesn't really go anywhere, and you don't really have time for the X-Men to really show what they can do and to really show their powers. They're just pigeonholed here and there when they need it to be, but not really anything of note. So I think there could have been more of that. It's a lot of telepathy. It's a lot of Professor X. It's a lot of Sophie Turner. And I don't know. It's just not, it didn't work for me at all. And then you have Jessica Chastain's character who plays Vuk, who you never really find out who she is. She's from a generation that's much older than the people on Earth, than the X-Men. She's trying to use this power to resurrect her world, but the people who are with her, who are helping her, they just kind of are thrown at the X-Men, like just giving them a reason to use their powers. There's no backstory. You don't know who these people are. They don't really have any superpower, but they have like super strength and super speed. But I mean, they're being thrown at the X-Men, and they have no chance, no hope at all of beating the X-Men. The only one who really does is Jessica Chastain. So you never really feel like they're in any type of the X-Men or any type of real trouble when they're fighting on this train and they're fighting these guys coming at them. It's just a reason to show off what they can do. And even then, they're not doing all that much except for Nightcrawler, who has a pretty good scene where he's just like stabbing away at people, sort of like he was in, I believe it was X2 was it X2? I don't know. There's a part in X2 where he kind of like, it's the part where I think he's trying to kill the president or something, where he like does his moving from place to place really quick in a puff of smoke with like daggers and stuff. But he's doing the same thing in this movie. But this movie falls flat to me. It doesn't really go anywhere. You never really flesh out. The main character here is Jean Grey, and they never really go too much into her character. This is supposed to be a movie that really shows who she is. It's supposed to really shine a light on who she is. This is where she's supposed to soar. This is where she's supposed to be a phoenix and soaring. And you never really feel that. And for me, it's the worst X-Men movie. I hated Last Stand. I really did. But I think if I had a choice of rewatching Last Stand or rewatching this, I would watch this. Or sorry, I would watch Last Stand. Yeah, so it pains me to say this. I would give this movie probably a 3 out of 10. I really don't like it at all, and I really have a hard time saying that because I love X-Men so much. But you have to admit when movies are bad, right? Even if you grew up idolizing these characters, you have to be able to say, that movie's not good. And this movie was not good. So that is number 4. Next time I will be doing my number 3 least favorite movie of all time, which will be Lords of War. Thank you. I hope you have a good day.